Howdy YouTube, and welcome to this episode of the Gunman. So today we'll be taking you through the entire procedure on this XK Jaguar. So it's pretty much a full respray, everything except for the rear bumper, the side skirts, and the door handles and mirrors. But apart from that, it is a full respray. So the car came in with heavily faded paint, mainly on the roof, and just a few dents and scratches here and there. So the condition of the car was actually not too bad at all. Obviously the panel beater has gone over and done some dents. The apprentice then primed it up and then over to me to take over. So as you can see there, I'm just checking the color because, as I mentioned, it's not a complete respray. On a complete respray, I would always just mix up the prime variant or the standard variant and spray it, so no color matching. But as you see here, I did actually do some checking of the color. So what I started off by was I went for the Spectro hit. That told me the lighter variant was good, and then I did just mix up a little 150 mils as a tester. I sprayed it out, and it turns out it was actually better than what was on the car already. So you know how the bumpers and side skirts, sometimes they can actually be a little bit of a different color from the factory body. So it turns out that my color was actually better than what was on the original paintwork. So we just went with that. Anyway, moving right along, you may have noticed that to start the job off, I gave the panels a wipe down with a rag and some cleaner. So that was just alcohol cleaner mixed with water. So it's just called water cleaner. Once I'm happy that the panels are nice and clean, I obviously went around and put some masking tape on the trims and stuff that I don't want to damage. So things like the headlights, the things that aren't coming off but I still don't want to damage them. So look, on this job, usually we would actually remove many more parts than we did on this job. But at the end of the day, I just do what I'm told. My boss told me to mask the parts up. Originally, that driver's side door was actually not even going to be painted, but I just said to him, I'm like, man, you're doing the guard, you're doing the quarter panel for the sake of having one uniform, even color down the whole side. I said, look, you're masking up the passenger side, we may as well just mask up the driver's side. You know what I mean? So. Yeah, as I say, like it must come down to the owner's budgets, and at the end of the day, I honestly don't ask too many questions. You know what I mean? The boss is just like, mask it up. So I'm like, okay. I said, you don't want to try and get him to pull it out, and he's like, no, I just don't want to. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to argue. I'll just do what I'm told. You know what I mean? So yeah. Don't look at this and think, oh, you're a hack, you know, you're not doing the job properly. This is just like, on the other hand, like we do resprays at this workshop where everything is done like 100% like factory paint. So every single nib comes out, every single part comes off. So we're more than capable of doing that, but at the end of the day, it really does just come down to what the customer wants. So this is not us being dodgy and charging to do it properly but not doing it properly. It is just down to what the customer wants. But yeah, on the other hand, it's a bit strange though, because I mean, it's an XK Jaguar. Like this car, I didn't really think of that much of it when it first came in, but the more I worked on it, the more I started to realize this is actually a really damn cool car. And then I thought I'd check up on car sales to see how much they're worth. These things are worth, even this, it's probably like around 2011 or something like that, probably around a 10-year-old car or thereabouts. Even this car here would probably go for around $80,000. That's I mean, I didn't look deeply into it, but from what I could gather from a quick car sales search, these things are going for some pretty good dollars. So on that account, it's kind of a little bit surprising that they wouldn't spend that little bit more money and do it properly. But for all I know, it could be just like a car yard job, or somebody's just bought it on the cheap to do it up and just flip it and make a bit of money. But as I say, that's the kind of stuff that I usually stay out of. That's one of the things that I do actually like about working on wages, is that I don't need to know all the ins and outs of the customers, and I don't have to talk money with customers and haggle and all that kind of stuff and all the stress that comes along with it, you know. But all of that aside, yeah, so one thing that you may have noticed me doing was, after I did all of the prep work, I took it out into the wash bay and I gave it a really good degreaser and hose down with the high pressure cleaner. And I think that made a world of difference to the cleanliness of this job. So this job actually came out a little bit cleaner than the previous respray. So previous respray I had done was actually a FG XR6. You've probably seen that video. I did do a video on this channel, and it was a green one. Yeah, so that one came up pretty nice, don't get me wrong, but there was like a couple more nibs in it than I was expecting. So I decided when this one came around, I would give it a pressure cleaner before I mastered up, and it really did make a big difference because this job here came up really clean. I was really happy with it. Anyway, all of that aside, I obviously did all the masking and then wiped it down with some Prepsol. And you may have also noticed that I used my microfiber cloths. I've been using them lately and they've been doing a really good job. Again, I think that can contribute to the cleanliness of the job. Obviously, once I'd wiped it down with Prepsol, I gave it a good tack rag and a blowdown too. And then straight onto the base coat metallic stage. So the color code is MEE and the name of the color is liquid silver. So it's actually like a relatively fine metallic, so I knew that the coverage was going to be pretty good. So with silvers, the coarser the metallic, the worse they're usually going to cover, and I think that's because they need to put more binder in with the color, with the coarser metallics, just to float those metallics so that they sit on the panel evenly. Which takes me to one thing that I've been a little bit surprised about with PPG. Now, I've been mentioning it on my second channel, my Raw channel, which I've actually been quite regular on, so be sure to go and check that channel out if you'd like to. I've been uploading like daily vids over there for about a month, so check that out. But one thing, as I was about to mention, is that with PPG, like the sandable primer in EnviroBase, here in Australia anyway, because I know that around the world it can be a little bit different. Some of you guys do actually have darker and lighter primers, but here in Australia, they've only got the one shade of sandable primer, which is very strange because like if the next job that I'm actually doing is a full respray on a black C200 Mercedes-Benz, and all they had was the one shade of primer, and that was like a light grey, but it's like the color of the car is black, so it just didn't make sense for me to go and put a light primer on a black car. I mean, I guess that their response would be to put a wet on wet down or put like a shaded base coat down, but then to me it's just pointless. It seems like a waste of time when you could just put the right colored primer down to help the coverage on the color. So yeah, there was actually a bit of a story with that black 200 Benz. I used the wet on wet primer as sanding primer after reading the technical data sheet, and the technical data sheet said that it was like sanding mode and it said high build mode, but as it turns out it's not. So the wording in the data sheet was really bad. But anyway, it's just a strange thing about PPG, and I know it might sound like I'm complaining about it, but I'm not. Like I don't hate PPG, but there's just a couple of things with PPG that they're very strange decisions, I guess, as much as anything. Even the thinning ratios, as I've said previously, it's a little bit confusing coming from percentages, you know, to PPG, where they give you it in a ratio, like the entire mix including the reducer is in a ratio, which can get a little bit confusing for me. To me, it'd be easier if they just said 3:1 plus 10% or 20%, but it's like 3:1 to 0.8. Like, what's the 0.8 mean? Like, what does that mean if it's a percentage? But either way, I'm getting to the bottom of it. I am actually getting better at it. So I've actually started using a viscosity cup lately, and that has actually helped improve my clear coat application, and it's sort of helped me get more consistent results, because what I was finding before, the clear was laying down nicely on the warmer days, but then when the cold days would come around, it was like a little bit thick and gluggy. And another thing I've actually started doing is just putting the clear coat in the booth as I'm doing my masking and base coat stage, so that obviously also helps thin it out a little bit. And yeah, so I've also just been mixing my clear up and then just checking it in the viscosity cup and making sure it's within that 18 to 20 seconds with my clear coat, so that's going through the viscosity cup. I also had someone on my Instagram page tell me to start using the viscosity cup on my base coat color. So I thought, okay, well, I'll check up the data sheet and see what they recommend. So, you know, the PPG's official recommendations on the viscosity of their base coat, and it turns out it was like, I think it was 22 to 26 seconds, that was the window. So I mixed it up at the general ratio that I usually mix it up, which is a percentage, bizarrely enough. So they give me the thinning ratio on the color as a percentage, but not on the clear. Again, just another bizarre, thing that they do. So it's not even consistent, but, and then, okay, I mixed it up at 15% because it's a metallic, which is what they recommend. They recommend 20% as a solid, right? So I mixed it up on that C200 bends, which I've got coming up, and it was like running through at 40 seconds. It's like double the recommendation. It's like, man, that's not even in the ballpark. Like, that's nowhere near it. There is no way, in no circumstances, no heat, no cold, that 15% was ever going to get that base coat in their own window. So why would they give you that recommended viscosity, but then also that thinning ratio? So yeah, it just seems a little bit strange to me. And even with like not having the dark or the light sandable primers, that just seems a very strange decision, because I think it was like one of the other paint lines that does have it. So I think it's like the Solvent line or one of the Deltron lines that does have a black and a white primer. But to me, it would be more important to have with the waterborne system, because it takes longer to dry, like you got to stand there with the air blowers. So to me, it would be more important to have that, be able to put less of that color on, like on your black car, just going over a black primer. So you only have to put like, say, 2.5 medium coats on it, rather than one really wet one and then your sort of medium and then your drop coat. So as I say, just some bizarre choices. And I mean, I've actually heard that they're going to be bringing out a few new products next year, so that'll be good. But yeah, look, ultimately I'm actually pretty glad to be working in this shop. I'm glad that I've had the opportunity to use PPG. I mean, it's just another learning experience, isn't it? So I wouldn't say it's my favorite paint system, but it's definitely not a bad paint system. So the gun that I used in this job here was the DV1, the DeVilbiss DV1. This is actually one of the first times I used it, if not the first. I think it was actually, yeah, the first time I ever used this gun. So fair to say I was pretty impressed with it. So it's actually, I was using the new air cap on the DV1. I say new, but it's relatively new. It's not like totally new, but it's the C2 air cap. I've actually done a separate review on that, so be sure to go and check that one out if that interests you. But on this car here, I use the 1.2mm fluid tip, and look, I found it a little bit slower than what I generally prefer, but I did like the material consumption, and I like the finish I got out of it. So if you hang around for a couple more minutes here, we're about to have a look over the car straight off the gun, and you'll be able to see that it was nice and clean, and it did lay down a nice amount of material, although I did have to slow down obviously to get a nice amount on, because I was using the 1.2. So look, ultimately I'm glad to have the 1.2 and the 1.3 for my DV1. I mean, how can you complain about those results? No runs, no excessive orange peel or anything like that. And ultimately just a nice tidy up on this beautiful XK Jaguar. As I said, the car really did start to grow on me the more time I spent on it. No, it's not perfect. Yes, there's a few ripples here and there, but it is absolutely what the owners were looking for. Yeah, it's one of those things, whenever you do a job like this, don't ever expect the panel beater to get every single one of those dents. No doubt you're going to find a couple of sharp ones here and there. But as I say, it's not one of those things that the bosses want me to spend a whole week on. It's not to say that I couldn't spend a whole week on a job like this and make it 100% perfect. It's just not what the customer's after. Just a quick mention too, I've actually been uploading all my videos, my back catalogue, to alternate video hosting sites like BitChute and Rumble. So what I'm going to be doing also is uploading my videos a little bit early over there. So there's an incentive. If you would like to get your videos early, go over and subscribe to my BitChute and Rumble channel. There are links in the description. Also, as I mentioned earlier, I've been very active on my Raw channel. Again, there is a link in the description down there. So this is a quick look at the car when it's all finished off. Now, this is actually prior to being polished, and the car actually still hasn't been polished. So I do regret not getting some video footage of it when it came in, but at that point, I didn't even know what was being done on it. I didn't know if it was going to be a respray, but ultimately it was a respray, and yeah, the paint was heavily faded, as I did mention, but I didn't get a great deal of video footage of that. So that's a video for you there, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you did, be sure to leave a big thumbs up, and yeah, go support the channel by buying some merchandise if you would like. We've got loads of cool stuff and some new merchandise, including hats and drink coolers and the famous Gunman spray suit. So until next time, get out there and paint some shit. Gunman out. I'd like to say a big thanks to everyone for watching, and if you'd like to support the channel further, you're more than welcome to go over and check out some of the merchandise we've got. My personal favourite is those spray suits, so they're a good quality Colad branded spray suit with the Gunman logo on it. There's also hats, drink coolers, hoodies and t-shirts, so be sure to go over and check out the link in the description if you are interested.